Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a true crime case about Jaycee Lee Duggar. Now I just want to say that this is one of my first true crime sort of videos that I'm making right now, and I think I'm going to continue making some of these in the future for my channel, so just a little heads up. Now getting straight into the case. On the morning of June 10th, 1991, Jaycee got up from bed like any other day. She ate breakfast, she was playing with her little sister, and she got ready for school. Her stepfather usually takes her down to the bus stop. He walks her down there because it's just a few yards from their house. As he was walking back home, he looked back and he saw Jaycee getting dragged into a car with two strangers. As soon as he saw the people take her, he got into his motorcycle and he started following them, chasing them down. But he did sadly lose them, and Jaycee would not be found for the next 18 years. As soon as Carl lost Jaycee and the people that kidnapped her, he called the police immediately, and there were search parties out looking for her, along with FBI agents, police dogs, and helicopters in the sky all looking for her. Now back to Jaycee. When she got kidnapped, the two people that kidnapped her were Philip and Nancy Gardito. They drove to their house in Anchieta, California, which is 3 hours away from where Jaycee lives, which is in South Lake Tahoe, California. When Philip and Nancy got to their house with Jaycee, they put her in a backyard shed along with some tents that were attached to the shed, and she would be living there for 18 years. As she was in the backyard of the shed, Philip would go back there multiple times and he would SA her and rape her. And as Philip went back there, he wouldn't call her Jaycee at all. He would call her Alyssa. In Jaycee's time at the shed, there were a few police calls made about Philip. The first one was less than a year into Jaycee's disappearance. A person called the police because they saw a little girl that looked like Jaycee looking at a missing persons poster of herself on a gas station wall. The little girl did leave with someone in a yellow van, and police were sent out there to look into it, but the girl in the van and the caller were nowhere to be found, and the caller didn't identify themselves, so we don't know who they were. But the van was later recovered at Philip's house. Now, after that call, the next call wouldn't be made for at least 10 years. The first call was made April 22nd, 1992. Now, the next 10 years that Jaycee had spent in the backyard of the shed, she did get pregnant twice. The first time when she was 13, she got pregnant with Philip's child, and she gave birth to them when she was 14. And her second child that she gave birth to was when she was 17. Now, in the time that she spent in the shed, she did have a journal and she did write a few things in it. The first entry that we found was September 5th, 2003, and it wrote, "I don't want to hurt him. Sometimes I think my very presence hurts him. So how can I ever tell him how I want to be free? Free to come and go as I please. Free to say I have a family. I will never cause him pain if it's in my power to prevent it. Free." And the next journal entry that they found was on July 5th, 2004. "It feels like I'm sinking. I'm afraid I want control of my life. This is supposed to be my life to do with what I like, but once again, he has taken it away." Now, because of the first journal entry that she wrote, it felt like she didn't want to hurt him because of a connection that they've had with having two children together. They believe that Jaycee had Stockholm Syndrome, which is a condition that tries to explain why hostages sometimes develops a bond with their capture. These can be used in situations like hostage takings, kidnappings, and abusive relationships. Now, talking a bit more about Philip, his first offense was in 1972. He drugged and SA'd a girl, a 14-year-old girl in Contra Costa County. Then, in June of 1976, he convinced a 19-year-old girl to get in his car. He handcuffed and essayed her. I'm not too sure if he was caught and then not convicted of anything, or he just never got caught. But then later, in November of 1976, he attempted to do the same thing with a 25-year-old girl, but then she escaped and then she alerted the neighbors. But then 1 hour later, he was gone and he lured another victim into his car. He took her to a storage shed where he essayed her as well. This crime alone got him 50 years in prison, but he only served 11 years of that sentence. They released him early because the parole board deemed him certified as not contributing to menace to health, safety, and morals of society. And another thing, after his crime, months after he was released, he went to an old victim that was working at a bar, and he told her, "It's been 11 years since I've had a drink." The victim reported him, and nothing really happened. I don't think she was even able to file a restraining order against him, get an ankle monitor, because they thought it would be too much of a hassle based on the hysteria or concern of the victim. But then after that, he was looking for his next victim, which would sadly be JC. Now, back to the situation with JC. The next call was in June of 2002. Someone made a call to the fire department in Phillips District, and they came out to help a juvenile that had a shoulder injury from the swimming pool that he had in his backyard. Now, at this time, Philip did have a parole officer, but they were never alerted of this situation because there's no record of it being saying that there was a juvenile involved. So because of that situation, there was no parole officer sent out there. The next call was made in 2006. His neighbor called at 911 to inform them that there was tents in his backyard, and there were kids living inside of them. They also mentioned that he was psychotic with sexual addictions. A deputy sheriff came out to talk to Philip about the situation, but the sheriff did not check the backyard at all. He only went to the front yard and talked to Philip for about a half an hour. I don't understand this at all because the neighbor reported there being kids living in the backyard in a shed and tents, and he didn't check the backyard at all. Anyways, the sheriff, he told Philip that it would be a violation code if people were living outside of the property. Now, 3 years after that call, August 24th, 2009, Philip was out visiting the University of California in Berkeley, I think that's how you pronounce it, in hopes of holding a special event as a part of his God's Desire program. He did go out there with his 2 children while JC was still stuck in the shed. Now, it's said that he created his God's Desire program to spread divine messages worldwide. While he was at the university, a member that works at the campus named Lisa Campbell followed him for most of the day because she had a bad feeling about him. And she did later call a Berkeley police officer that she knew by the name of Allie James. They conducted a background check on him, and they found that he was a registered offender. They contacted his parole officer, who was Edward Santos. Now, as Allie and Edward were talking, he did mention that he was childless. There was no record of him having any child, and when Allie brought up the fact that he was with 2 children at the time, Edward set up a meeting to meet with Philip to talk about this whole situation. When Philip came to Edward, he brought Nancy, JC, and the 2 children. Philip was trying to convince Edward that JC and her 2 children were just relatives that were staying at his place for the time being. But the moment that JC got a moment alone with Edward, she tried to tell him the truth, and he did call the police on him, and after hours of the police interrogating him, he did confess to kidnapping them. Now, after that, JC and Philip were both arrested. They both got charged with 29 felonies of rape, kidnapping, and false imprisonment. Nancy was sent to 36 years in prison, while Philip was sentenced to life in prison with no parole for 431 years. After all she went through, she now lives with her mother, her stepsister, who is now 19, and her 2 children as well, who were 11 and 15 at the time. JC has been doing pretty well. She has written a few books. One of the books she wrote was released in 2011 called A Stolen Life, and another one 2016 called Freedom, My Book of First. And I hope she's now living a very peaceful and happy life now, away from him forever. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Really enjoyed researching everything and now telling you about it. Thanks for watching. Bye!